Hello, welcome to the Daily Plunge. We are in Isaiah chapter 51, verses 17 through 23. The prophet calls out to the people of God, to Jerusalem, the city of God, really an emblem for the church, and says, wake up, awake. You've drunk down the cup of God's wrath. Not only have you drunk it, you drained it all the way down to the sediments in the bottom of the cup. You drained the dregs, and this goblet of wrath makes people stagger because of the power it has. It says in verse 18, among all the children that have been birthed out of your community of faith, none of them have guided you or led you in the midst of this crisis. In many ways, they've just run away. Verse 19, and so double the calamities have come upon you, ruin and destruction, famine and sword. And you think about how so often it seems like bad after bad comes upon us. And sometimes that's because we've walked away from God and we're suffering the consequences of our sin. Verse 20, your children faint, they lie in every street corner, and they're like animals caught in a net. And they are filled with the wrath of God, with the rebuke of your God. And I think about how when people run away from God, they think, God's not going to follow me. I'm just going to do what I want to do. But you can't outrun God. And when you push God away, you're constantly suffering with the brokenness of that relationship. It affects every aspect of your life. And you may think, God is not in my life. I've rejected God and I'm not dealing with him. But actually, all your behavior is a reaction against the Lord. You see this in just the anger of so many people who have rejected the Lord, and they say that they're people of peace, but they're not. Quite honestly, there's religious people who have rejected God but go on religiosity, and they can be very negative as well. And so he goes on, verse 21, therefore hear this, you afflicted, you are made drunk with this wrath, this goblet you drank down. But this is what the sovereign Lord says, who is your God and defends your people. He says, I have taken this cup out of your hand, and I don't want you to drink it anymore. I want actually for you to be redeemed. And I'm going to put this goblet of wrath into the hands of those who torment you. Those of you who say, who want to walk all over you. And God says, I'm going to stop the wicked from walking all over you. I'm going to protect you because you're mine. Well, one of the things that is hard for us to hear as people of God is that there are consequences for sin, and yet we see it everywhere, all around our world. Our world doesn't like to hear it. They just want to hear about blessing and heaven, but they never want to hear about God's wrath or hell. But it is a working out of God's righteousness, his holiness, and his majesty. And it's because of that wrath that Christ comes to pay the price, not to God, but to pay the cost of drinking down that wrath. Amen.